If you're one of those people who's used dating apps in the past and I don't know, maybe you've soured on the idea, well, there's something new, but at the same time, something old, kind of a hybrid approach to dating now online. We wanted to find out more. Jenny Gross is a New York Times columnist and reporter out of London. And Jenny, you wrote a piece on something called, and I've never heard of this before, Date Me Docs. This is people who've decided, you know what, I need a better way to try to find, if you will, love, relationships online. Can you explain what this is and how it works?
Sure. So, well, as you said, I think a lot of people who have been on dating apps have found the experience somewhat frustrating. And so this is almost an alternative to dating apps where people in a Google Docs file or another application like Notion write a profile describing who they are, what they're looking for, maybe some possible red flags even, and then share it on their social media account. So it's a way, I mean, usually these are pretty text heavy, so they can be 1,000 or 2,000 words long. And it's a way to get around some of the algorithmic driven swipe-based aspects of apps.
And what I find fascinating about it is this idea of kind of going back in time, and yet most of the people doing this would be too young to have ever remembered personal ads, or things that people used to do, like taking out ads in the paper and stuff. So do you think there's some sort of longing for more connection, more personal information? I don't know, like the way we started wanting to have vinyl and record players again. Is there something something more tactile? I don't know. Please explain what you think is going on here, Jenny.
Yeah, and I mean, immediately when I heard about this, I thought of personal ads, although they are different in a way, because personal ads for short, witty, focus on what someone was looking for, maybe not so much about the person who was writing it. But absolutely. And I thought it was funny because a lot of people who are using these Date Me Docs are in San Francisco, work in tech, or in New York. And but it feels very clunky, old internet. Someone I spoke to described it a little bit like AIM, the messaging system. And I think there is something, nostalgic about it, people wanting to go back to maybe a less algorithm-driven way of meeting people. And I mean, it was interesting. People also said they wrote these Date Me Docs so that when they met people in person, they could refer them to their doc and see if, have that person decide if they were a possible match.
Yeah, what's interesting, I think, in that, you mentioned like the old personal ads long before dating apps even existed. So this is a way, it's kind of almost like writing a brief essay about yourself. And I imagine from what I'm reading here from people who've done this, you kind of weed out people who otherwise would be looking for something casual because there's enough in what you've written that they can kind of get an idea they already know a little bit about you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I heard. I mean, something also to be clear, this is clearly not for everyone. I mean, you have to be pretty brave to go out there and write 2,000 or even 500 words about yourself and post it publicly, or even if you're just sending it to other people. I mean, there's a lot of courage I think it takes to do that, and openness, and I think not everyone is comfortable with that. But I really admire how people who wrote these, they tried to be really honest about themselves and even their flaws. Whereas sometimes with an app, it feels like, some of the profiles that they're written to appeal to as many people as possible, but maybe you can only glean so much. So I think, it's a neat thing and feels in a way pretty different from dating apps.
This idea that it requires more effort and more investment, I think out of the gate kind of shows that you're taking it all more seriously. I can totally understand being fed up with those apps, and yet I can't help but wonder, is it working? Are these docs working? Are people meeting their matches?
So through the course of my reporting, I found one person who had found his significant other through these Date Me Docs. And I think for some of the people I spoke to, one woman said the quality of responses she got from people who reached out to her through her Date Me Docs versus through the apps were so much higher because, as you pointed out, the person actually bothered to read the short essay that she had written about herself, whereas, she had found that people on the apps who reached out to her were mostly looking for something casual. So I think, she had been since October, she'd been on 15 different dates and hadn't found her person yet, but was satisfied with the quality of people she was meeting. And another woman I spoke to said her profile went viral and she ended up getting hundreds of responses, and she's she's still dating 4 people who she met through the Date Me docs. So, I mean, I think people are using this in conjunction with dating apps and meeting people in person, but it felt like a really fun, nice, clever way to kind of avoid some of the fatigue and exhaustion associated with being on the dating apps.
Yeah, I think interesting in the article as well to note that, people actually got kind of specific here, but then the warning, as you just said a minute ago, would be you don't necessarily want to reveal too much, right? That's part of the issue here?
Right. Yeah. This was one woman said that of the responses she got from her Date Me docs, it was charming how honest people were about their flaws and things that could be seen as red flags. But she also said, a reminder to people out there, you got to try to convince me why I should go on a date with you. You don't need to hear all the red flags too soon. So one guy who's quoted in the article, he said that the reason why he was so honest about his flaws is because he didn't want to waste his time. So, he doesn't like dancing in public and he doesn't really like traveling. And for some people, those 2 things might be seen as non-starters. And so he thought, let's just, not waste anyone's time. If that's a non-starter, then I don't want to, go out on a first date with you.
Jenny, I understand from your article, like that they can look very different too, right? Like some people take a different approach with a very sort of business-like approach, and others it's much more personal. Are there always photographs involved, or sometimes are there no photos?
I think that all of the ones I saw had photos, but I think, almost all of the ones that I looked at, and I looked at many, were pretty text heavy. Whereas I think sometimes with dating apps, they're designed around photos, and that was something that came up again and again from people I spoke to who had created their own Date Me docs. It was almost, people. And several people mentioned OkCupid, back in the early days when it was really about the essay description of the creator and not so much, a quick swipe. And so. They have different formats. Some had, different colored fonts. Some were more photo heavy. Some were less photo heavy. Different structures, and I like that too. It felt very creative. But yeah, as I said, also pretty bold.
I wonder one thing too, though. I mean, the whole thing here, I'm guessing, stems from the fact that dating apps, traditional, if we can call them that, dating apps, are either not as effective as they were, or people are disappointed in them. Is that something you discovered?
There's a survey, a Pew survey that came out on this, and actually about half the people who use dating apps had positive experiences. And I think we all know people who have met great people through dating apps, and they're clearly working for a lot of people. But the survey also found that dissatisfaction might be growing. So last year, 46% of users said their overall experiences had been negative, and that's slightly higher than 42% in 2019. So not a huge difference, but it is slightly higher. And I think especially for women, women have reported that they're more likely to have negative experiences than men. So about 2/3 of women under 50 on dating apps said they have received physical threats, experienced unwanted continued contact from a match, been called an offensive name, or been sent unsolicited sexual messages or images. So,
Boy.
I mean, that might even be conservative, but this is a pretty thorough survey of more than 6,000 people. So certainly women who are reporting having more negative experiences than men.
All right, listen, we are out of time. This is fascinating. I want to thank you so much. We appreciate you weighing in on the story today. Thanks again.
Thank you.